Hi, I'm Fred Satilli, and I'm about to read section 4, the final section of FemiNazi. And I have to say, reading this book onto YouTube like this has been some experience for me. I left a lot of things out in trying to keep the book brief, but I included a lot of things too. And the rest of the book up to this point has been personal to me, but generic in the fact that so many people are suffering from the same situation or the same circumstances. And this section, although, as I'm about to say when I read it directly, a lot of people will identify with it, but for me, it's for my children. And so here we go. Each page of this book was hard for me to write to one degree or another, but this part was devastating. This part will be related with by thousands, but for me, as I wrote it, it was just for my children. Parental alienation, PA, or what follows parental alienation syndrome, PAS, is an affliction of the mind and the spirit. Because it reaches in and violates nature or natural law, it hurts all involved in a way that damages them at a gut or internal level. It's an environmental toxin that insidiously makes both mind and spirit incapable of satisfying the mental, emotional, sentimental, and naturally hardwired needs of the victim. It's an addictive, unnatural poison, comparable in many ways to dope. Anyone familiar with the vast experience and clinical work of Dr. Craig Childress will recognize many of the terms I use in relating the truth about PAS as it relates to me. I highly recommend this calm, rational gentleman's work to anyone who needs to hear it from someone with academic credentials. There are volumes written by scholars on this subject, but any wise person, informed, and having done sincere soul-searching can see the simple truth. We all know that a diploma does not make you wise. Are you wise enough to recognize a man who is? Dr. Childress is a wise man as well as an accomplished scholar who has identified the real essence of PAS and what you can do to free yourself from it. I highly recommend his work. At the time of this writing, he had a 9-part presentation on YouTube that should be watched, listened to, and seriously considered. The truth is, when parental alienation is utilized in a divorce situation by one parent, the child of that parent eventually wants nothing to do with the other parent and clings desperately to the alienating parent. In a short amount of time, the child begins to want less and less to do with the alienated parent. There is something about the alienated parent that the child finds extremely annoying. It's not a specific thing, it's a feeling. Just the way they walk, talk, drive, eat, anything, everything they do is just annoying. It creates a sense of anger or resentment that makes you want to flee from them or banish them. It's a feeling. What you are feeling is real. You really don't like the bad parent. The problem is that the reason you can't specify why you feel the way you do is because your deep-seated feeling is not what you think it is. Once you understand where your painful feeling is coming from, it will simply vanish. The relief in your mind and heart will be astounding. The relief is what I want for my own children. Okay, so what is causing that feeling? Simply put, natural human attachment. In the human brain, there are fundamental involuntary functions, much like the need to reproduce. Another of these basic biological compulsions is the attachment system. This system developed over millions of years of evolution. It's hardwired into all of our psyches. In the wild, the young have always been victims of predators. Adult animals are not the ideal target of a tiger slinking through the grass. It's the vulnerable, the old, the injured, and the young. Consequently, the young have an instinctual need to cling to their parents for protection. Children bond to their parents. Regardless of what they think in their minds, they have an irresistible and undeniable bond. The young who did not bond with their parents were eaten by predators and were eliminated from the gene pool. That's just how real this is. This child-to-parent bond can seldom be established between a child and just any adult. It is not natural to the animal, which is the human being. The attachment system is very specific. Throughout the animal kingdom, the child attaches with the parent, not others. I was raised from the age of 5 by a stepfather who did his very best by me. It was his desire that I use his last name as my own throughout my childhood. Despite his efforts, at the age of 18, when I could make decisions regarding myself, I scorned his name and took the last name of my long-deceased natural father. I never heard a word of resentment for this decision by my stepfather. He understood and accepted my decision without a word. Even as the good friends we were in adulthood, the issue never came up. The attachment system has two basic components. First, there is a basic possessive ownership. The person is my father, my mother, my son, my daughter. The instinct reaches the level of property. The blood belongs to me. Second, there is a grief response that kicks in if the child or parent is lost. This is undeniable, especially for me at my age, when I see the death of parents, of friends, and the profound effect it has on them. PAS creates an unnatural situation that is disturbing to the parent and child in an inhuman way. The parent is not physically dead, but you, as the alienated child, are expected to act as if they are. This creates an insoluble problem for your very nature. With PAS, you reject a parent with whom you have actually bonded. You simply can't do this without being angry. When you are angry, and it makes no sense to you, it's because you are having an internal struggle that only you can resolve, but that you see as not your fault. As it turns out, you're right. It's not your fault. The attachment system is so important to humans that in desperation, a human will bring in an animal to fulfill the need. Pet attachment is even prescribed by doctors. Grief over pet loss is a common occurrence that I'm sure each one of us has witnessed. It's because the pet is not just another animal. It is yours and you are its. From the TV show The Twilight Zone, written in 1961 or 1962, a hillbilly in one episode says, it's a quote, "A man has a right to his dog, just as the dog has that right to his man." Well, without analysis, that sentiment from the hillbilly was essentially understood by viewers 50 years ago. You bond for the emotional protection of companionship. You see paw print bumper stickers that say, "Who saved who?" That urgent but now fulfilled bonding sentiment is celebrated by that sticker and triumphantly announced to the world. It's just how heavy it is. It's the most important thing in that person's life. When your attachment system cannot fulfill its function, it frustrates you until the day you die. It is much a compulsion as self-preservation. In fact, it is part of self-preservation. How is parental alienation started, and how is it developed into a syndrome? Parental alienation starts when one parent creates an image of the other parent as intrinsically bad. Constant disapproval of one parent by the other in front of the children and constant reward for acknowledgement by the children of the rejected parent's disapproved actions cause turmoil in the child's mind that can only be logically addressed by moving closer to the good parent and further from the bad. That's bad in quotes. This is counterintuitive for the child, creating an uncomfortable mental or emotional environment. This discomfort is blamed by the good parent, really the abuser, on the bad. The children are stuck with inexplicable, irresolvable pain. Because the resolution between the children and the bad parent is a threat to the control of the good parent, the children sense the threat signals by the good parent and move closer for protection of both them and the abusing parent. The protected parent sends reward signals to the children who find momentary comfort. This mode of behavior is quickly learned until there is pain when the bad parent is near. I will never forget my shivering daughter Maeve at the age of 7, standing on the heating vent, recoiling from me as I moved close to give her a warming hug, as I had so many times before. I remember thinking, what has Stacy done to her? I was never sure if my desire to throw up at that moment was my own emotional response at my shock, or a little gastroesophageal reflux disorder, which I suffered from at that time. I do remember leaning over the kitchen sink just after that moment, but fortunately I didn't bring anything up. I also remember Stacy's debriefing of the kids whenever they were with me. The questions, "Are you okay?" as if they wouldn't be. At the time, I just considered it caring. I just didn't know about PAS. Now I do. So much of parental alienation is little things. Disapproval was big in my case. Repeated rolling of the eyes, sneers, just up and leaving the room, or straight out chastisement in front of the children has a cumulative effect. Availability is a big issue. When one parent spends most of the majority of the time with the children, the possession aspect of the bonding becomes lopsided. In my case, my wife felt that more love for me from them threatened her bond with her children, the possessiveness. They might learn to resist her control, as I did. She felt strongly that I had a responsibility to them and her, but certainly not the kind of ownership that had to be reserved for her only, by merit of her disproportionate time spent with them. PAS was affecting her too. She was desperate to hold something together that was unnatural. Though maybe not actively aware in a scholarly way, she certainly knew in her gut that she was playing a game of control with a man who, unlike her father, had a penchant for resisting control and who had passed the lifestyle on to my children. I had to be alienated. It makes sense, but it's biologically unfeasible. Fortunately for her, she found a FemiNazi lawyer who was able to physically extract me from my children's lives so that Stacy's program of parental alienation could be not only completed, but maintained indefinitely. Since I mentioned Stacy's father 2 paragraphs ago, I would like to include this. I believe that Stacy loved her father as she was bound to love him. William Gray was a nice, quiet man who did nothing with his life. I made my disapproval of him as a father and a man known to Stacy, who, in her way of being non-confrontational, never challenged the disapproval. I believe that her lack of challenge was because of recognition of what I was saying. But I was obviously wrong. Stacy also did nothing with her life outside the home while she was married with me. I don't know what she does now. And she wanted it that way. She was the perfect wife for her father, but not the perfect wife for me. I believe that my contempt for her father was ultimately perceived on some level as contempt for her. When we met, she described what she hoped her life would be like. With full freedom to do anything she liked, she did exactly the opposite of what she told me. The girl I married was not the girl I ended up with. I did not, nor could I, appreciate the damage done to her by facilitating her departure from her parents. Had I known better, I should have left her to resolve the issues she had with her parents before getting involved with her. Neither she nor I could have possibly known the depth of her problems. I believe that separation from her family, dysfunctional as they were, caused such a crisis in her that she turned her back on her dreams and began the mad, non-stop child production obsession to fill a gap somewhere in her soul. I believe her bond of blood with her children was all she understood. She would create it, and then never betray it, as her parents had with her, as they turned her back on her, as they turned their back on her. I know that throughout our 22 years together, she never wished to bond with me, or perhaps didn't even think it was possible, or perhaps on some level blamed me for disturbing the bond that she had with her father, and for me, virtually inexplicably, to bond with her tragic disaster of an alcoholic mother. Having characterized Stacy's mother badly, and having acknowledged Stacy's father as a nice man, but not my kind of man, allow me to characterize myself. Now, before I describe the wonderful Fred, allow me to confess to having a loud voice, both in volume and opinion. For me to yell that any group or individual at any time sucks is pretty common. I am not shy about my opinions or feelings. I feel that I am entitled to be myself everywhere, including and especially in my own home. I did not realize that my wife, regrettably, was not like this. She was largely silent. That doesn't make her a bad person. It simply makes her bad for me. I never indicated that her style was bad for the kids. I would have appreciated that much respect from her. The kids were, after all, ours. In our time together, this is the characterization now, I never hit Stacy or our children, or was verbally or economically abusive. I was never out of work. I never had a substance abuse problem. We always had a credit rating in the 700s. We always had a half a dozen clean joint credit cards for any emergency. I was never late on a payment for anything. We never had less than a full cupboard of food. We never had less than 2 cars. I bought my family a house. Then I bought them a better house so they could grow up in a better town with better schools. In 1989, I had a personal credit line of $50,000. I got into and out of 2 separate businesses, making a profit in both. I paid the bills for 7 surgical child deliveries. I was the son of a grandmother who delighted my wife and children. I kept my good friends away from Stacy per her request. Until Maeve was born, I told Stacy I loved her every single day of our marriage. In fact, I always came home happy and ready for love, unless I was incapacitated by violent illness. And did this all while suffering badly from severe migraine, gastroesophageal reflux disorder, and terrible allergies while working in a chemically toxic environment. I did this all with commissioned physical labor. I did not have paid vacations or a dependable salary that I could take for granted. More money for my family was to be had with commissions, so I worked. And speaking of allergies, I'm allergic to cat dander. Stacy had 4 cats. My point here is that I was what's known as a normal range parent. My parenting was fine. Could it have been better? Of course. There's always room for improvement. So the question is moot. Was I pretty damn good? Yes, of course. Did I deserve the treatment I got from Stacy, the FemiNazi lawyer, and the court? No, of course not. So why does it remain? It remains because Stacy suffers from parental alienation syndrome. So why are normal range parent and a normal range grandparent rejected by his children and her grandchildren even after 15 years? We are rejected because my children are genuinely uncomfortable with us. What has happened is that my children and the good parent have created an image of me that is that I am fundamentally bad and inadequate. In fact, the image states that I am destructive or mentally abusive or threatening in some way. But whatever I am, it's bad. And they are all well rid of me forever. And I guess well rid of my mom too. I am no longer a nurturing, protective parent to them. I am a threat to them. They erroneously define me within the primal attachment system now, as a predator, not a protector. The attachment system does not allow the children to bond with a predator. It must hide from the predator and bond with the nurturing protector. It is an absolute fact that Stacy has protected and nurtured her children to the best of her ability from even before the moment they were born. But they aren't her children. They're our children. And in my opinion, they're really their own. In our stewardship until they tell us otherwise. Part of every parent's natural rights is that of being able to raise their children with their own set of morals and values. I always silently respected Stacy's rights in this regard, even when I disagreed. That measure of dignity was not returned to me. So again, why are my children so uncomfortable with me that they have this unnatural rejection of the entire parental side of our family? In a few words, it's grief response. The way the hardwired attachment system works is not something that you can control with your mind. You cannot hold your breath until you suffocate. This attachment system is the same way. You are predisposed to bond with your parents. If someone cuts off your finger and sells it to someone in China, and that person grafts it onto its own hand, it's still your finger. Your parents are the same to you. They cannot be replaced, and the bonding impulse cannot be honestly resisted. It's against your nature to be self-destructive, but people do commit suicide. To commit suicide, you must have an unhealthy and terrible resolve. It's the same with suppressing your natural parental attachment. When you cannot complete your attachment, you become unhealthy because the attachment system doesn't ever go away. You have a motivational system that cries out strongly for bonding, but your suppression causes a disruption that causes a grief response. You experience the primal pain, anger, and frustration of the death of a parent. One of the aspects of anger caused by pain is, you hurt me now, so now I hurt you. This too is very primal. My children believed that they were abandoned. This caused them great pain because of the disruption of the attachment system. They are in pain, so they respond by being angry. The anger is towards who they believe is causing the pain, but their original premise is not true. They were not abandoned. Their father was stricken from them. This is often felt by a child whose parent is incarcerated and no visitation is allowed. This is one of the aspects of child care that the FemiNazis wish to deny. To deny access to a parent is to abuse a child, and this is true of a child at any age. This scenario also takes place with an elderly conservatorship situation. A caretaker will keep family members apart so that finances or a will is controlled. The government is complicit in this crime against nature also, but this is a subject for another day. Incredible as it might sound, to deny your attachment system is to figuratively kill your parent. That alienated parent is dead to you, and it is you who made the choice to pull the trigger. Talk about grief. A great many times a child will do this because contact with the alienated parent only brings a response to attach to the alienated parent more. It's involuntary. The child simply demands attachment, and attachment is welcome, but the child can't then return to face the alienating parent. This conflict can be so unbearable that figuratively killing the parent, as I described a moment ago, the parent is the only option for the conflicted person to bring some amount of consistency to their existence. I believe that for this reason, all 7 of my children have killed me and my whole family. The problem is that we're all still here. We're great people. We love you. The good news is that there is a solution. The solution is simple. Call, visit, and find out for yourself how you really feel. I guarantee that if you make a sincere effort to embrace your own blood relatives, you will find that the boogeyman in your life will be gone. You will find that you do not have to hang your head in shame for what has happened between you and your family. The fear will be gone. Now, I know what you're thinking. Won't I betray my mother if I call my grandmother, or God forbid, my dad? No, you won't. Because we all want you to continue to love your mother every bit as much as you do. You have to. The love you have and the desire to protect your mother is hardwired into you. In fact, I never asked you to turn your back on her to begin with. I have no desire to do it now. In fact, I can't, because you can't. The choice is simple. Be a happy family, or choose to live in shame with weird grief. Anger and animosity are the byproduct of your grief response. You're not an angry and mean person, are you? You're a nice person. Anger and animosity make it easy to be mean. What has happened to Grandmom, me, you, and even your mother in the last 15 years, 16 years now, as a result of feminazi hate is what you are supporting with that anger. It doesn't have to be this way. Stacy can be cold. She has shown that. But I believe that she's not evil. I believe that she is insecure or afraid that I will hurt her in some way because she hurt me. I have never done that. In fact, I have let her have her way from the moment I met her. If Lori Bernstein had not corrupted the court, I would have been there for you, Shay, Callie, Fitzy, Liam, Siobhan, Bryn, and Maeve, just as I had always been your entire life. I would have been there to give you everything I had, as I always had done. Your mother and I could have easily lived a mile apart and seamlessly put an end to our marital relationship without hurting you. That was my simple goal with the divorce. It was the lustful hate of the feminazi lawyer who made it impossible for me to live in New Jersey. The book is called Hotsy Totsy Feminazi for a real reason. It's meant to name the evil that destroyed the natural course of our family, the evil that legitimized alienating your father and your dear grandmother. Don't allow that evil to dictate your moral standards and hold your soul hostage. Stand up boldly and fix the dysfunction in your family. Make yourself whole again. Restore your integrity. And when you do, you will at first experience relief, and then satisfied pride, and at last joy.